Hello, 22 Tony here, with another discussion on collecting vintage and antique ammo. I just returned from the Dillsburg, PA Gun, Knife, and Military Show, and I picked up a few items while I was there. Now, we've talked on several occasions about the difficulty of finding and collecting vintage and antique ammo. Well, military and gun shows are just another way of doing that. At today's show, it was a really small show. It was just one room in a fire hall, and I think they might have said there were 100 tables, and it didn't even seem like it was that many. So it was a small show, but there were really two dealers there that did have some nice vintage ammo. There were a few other tables that had, a little bits and pieces here and there, but there were actually two dealers there that had a nice selection. Well, I just picked up a few items for my collection. Nothing real overly difficult to find, but just again, a few interesting items I thought you might be interested in. First, I picked up a few 16 gauge paper shotgun shells. I started with a Winchester Super X. I have a Remington Nitro Express and a Winchester Ranger. Now, again, these aren't particularly difficult to find. What I liked about them and why I picked these up is these two are slugs, and this one's a #1 buck. So that made them a little bit more interesting to me, that it's not something you see every day. So again, two 16 gauge slugs, or what I used to call pumpkin balls, and the #1 buck. So I just thought those were a little bit interesting. Then the 22 boxes is, my primary collectible. I did find a couple that I needed for my collection. The first is a U.S. cartridge company. It's an NRA box. So this was introduced in about 1917, and it ran through about the 1930s. Now, this particular box I know is pre-1926. Winchester bought the U.S. Cartridge Company in 1926, and they changed the label a little bit. So, two-piece box, prior to 1926, U.S. Cartridge Company, NRA box. Now, the box itself is not great condition. The top's not bad, so it'll display very nicely the way I display them. But, again, the bottom label's been torn off pretty well, and it is empty. But still, at $2, I couldn't resist. So that was a nice box to add to my collection. Then the other 22 box I found was the Remington New and Improved Clean Bore 22 Long. Now, this particular box was introduced about 1939, and it ran for a few years. After the war, they did make some slight changes, so this is probably an earlier box. But again, definitely, introduced 1939 by... certainly by 1960 this box was gone, but again, I believe this was one of the earlier boxes. Again, this was the box that came after the Dogbone boxes, the famous Dogbone boxes in 1939. They removed the bone type issue and went to a cleaner box. Now, this particular box, again, is not overly rare. It's not real easy to find, but it's not overly rare either. It was a short run, so there's not a huge quantity of them. But I like the fact that it was 22 long. It is factory full, and as we've discussed in other videos, I feel confident that those cartridges would fire today. There's no doubt in my mind. They're clean, and I don't think there'd be any issue with that. Well, for those of you that aren't interested in shotgun shells or 22 boxes, I picked up a couple of more oddities, the one really not. The first thing I have here is a 257 Weatherby Magnum. Not a particularly rare cartridge. It was just something that I thought was interesting, and it was in a box, so I went ahead and grabbed it. The 257 Weatherby was developed by shortening the 375 H&H Magnum. It was designed in 1944 and introduced in 1945, and since then it's become fairly popular, a nice Weatherby. The next I have is a 4570. This was designed in 1873 as a military cartridge, and there were a few minor modifications, but it was used for years. This particular one, I believe this is a Frankfurt Arsenal head stamp. I don't know if you're going to be able to see that or not, but it's marked 5F91, and I'm not a military cartridge collector and I'm not an expert on this, but I believe that means it was Frankfurt Arsenal and produced in 1891. But please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on that. Now the last one, again, this was thrown in a box, and I'm not 100% positive, but based on the dimensions, I believe this is a 6.5 Carcano. You're probably familiar with the Carcano because that's the caliber that killed JFK. But the 6.5 Carcano was actually introduced in the 1890s, I believe. Italian military cartridge. The head stamp on this at the top is D period M period, and at the bottom is the letter K. On the left is 18 and on the right is 95. So again, if I'm correct, I'm not a military cartridge collector and I could be wrong on this, but I believe this is a 6.5 Carcano produced in 1895. So again, just a little bit interesting. These aren't, I don't think there's anything here that's particularly rare, but they just seemed interesting, and again, I was able to add a couple of boxes to my collection. I know everybody always wants to know what was the price. I did mention that the empty NRA box I paid $2 for. I think that was a good buy. I think even in this condition, this is a hard box to come by. Empty with the bottom label torn. I would think the value of that's actually probably in the $10, $15, $20 range, but again, at $2 I thought it was a good buy. The Remington New and Improved 22 long, I paid $10 for the box. 22 long, you're going to pay $10 for any box. So again, a 1930s, 1940s, in nice clean condition. Now the bottom of the box does show a little bit of wear. It's been rubbed on a counter somewhere or stained, but even still, at $10, that was a good buy, and to add that to my collection, it's going to display very nicely. It was well worth it. The other ones, I didn't pay more than $1 for any of them. Or no, I'm sorry, the 4570 I did pay $3 for. The other ones were less than $1, and one of them was thrown in just because the dealer liked me, I guess. So anyway, I didn't want to spend a lot of time today, but I wanted to show you my my ammo score at the military show at Dillsburg, PA. Hope you enjoyed today's video. Please watch my other videos and please share. Thanks. Have a good day.